Hello, Piero here. I want to talk about the nature of debate. Okay, this is something very practical. It comes up a lot. It's come up recently. The issue is something like this. If I call you a baby killer, then I am asserting something about you. And I will have done that because, I don't know, you said you were a baby killer, or I caught you killing babies or something like this. But if you think I've called you a baby killer in a conversation, I probably have not called you a baby killer. It's probably more something like this. I'm probably assuming you don't want to kill babies, you see. And I'm saying, hey, these principles you're proposing add up to allowing baby killing. And you don't want to kill babies. So maybe this is a compelling argument of why you should change those principles. Okay, this is going on right now with Wuchtdar in the sense that on the free will, I'm saying that his principles of denying willpower is a denial of will, a denial of life, a rejection of responsibility. And yet I know Wuchtdar does not reject personal responsibility. I know that really from the materialist level on up, that Wuchtdar and I agree on a lot of things. And all I'm really saying is that these principles that you are advocating don't add up to what you really believe. Maybe you should change those principles. I mean, it's the same example with Luke 12,000. He advocates market anarchy, and I think that will lead to less freedom. But I'm not saying he's for less freedom. No, I think that he wants to maximize freedom, and I'm saying, look, the system that you're advocating does not enhance freedom. Therefore, maybe you should advocate a different system. Usually the goals of someone's, character are linked to them personally, and they're not likely to give those up. They are thinking in order to support how they believe, in order to understand how they believe, in order maybe so that other people could have principles that would lead them to the similar goals that they value. I don't think Luke wants to see more slavery in the world of any kind, but I think that market anarchy would lead to that. So this is a way to make compelling arguments. Now, knowledge can be arranged in a sort of a column, and at the very most fundamental level you define things, and at a level higher than that you define things in terms of the lower level, at a level higher than that again in terms of the lower level, and so on. Now this gives an idea that we go to the bottom and we build up from there, but in reality what happens is people have truths that they find at all sorts of levels. So for example, I think I agree with Wuchtdar, so I'm going to say, I think Wuchtdar has some truths at the materialist level, or at this level of sustainability that we've been talking about. But when he's tried to go deeper and provide a foundation for those beliefs, a philosophical foundation, I don't think he's done that. So I will say, hey, here's your goals, but these principles lead over here, not to your goals. So this is supposed to be a compelling argument about why you might want to rearrange the principles in the foundation. And specifically in Wuchtdar's case, very much so, because Wuchtdar, I'm sorry to talk about you in the third person, it's always a problem here. I mean, I'm also talking to you, but you're very much like a skeptic, and you just can't base skepticism on objectivism. They're not actually compatible. So the idea here is that we need to not cast aspersions on other people, but we also need to understand that if you think you've been called a baby killer, that probably you haven't been. Usually, some people do take the shortcut of, you're a baby killer, you want to enslave people because of these principles. But for that to be true, they'd have to be assuming that you would put more faith in those principles than the goals. And that's often not the case. I mean, it's clear in Luke's case He wants to maximize freedom. He wants it to be on a just basis. He wants it to not be hypocritical. He thinks market anarchy satisfies those needs of his. If he could be convinced that market anarchy doesn't satisfy those needs, then he's either going to have to change those needs, right? Because he thinks those principles are so good that really, come what may, good or bad, we take those principles. Or he's going to change those principles into something else that does satisfy the need. And generally speaking, as great as principles are, we are inventing them to explain how we feel on some higher level, some truth that we have arrived at already. Now, it's really inevitable that we have truths of high levels because we're looking into the depths when we're trying to justify our systems. So anyway, I mean, I think it's very important when we're talking about ideas, and we basically end up also talking about people, that we keep this all clear. You know, I don't want Wukhtar to think that I'm saying that he denies will. I mean, Wukhtar, you have a very strong will. I mean, I don't think that there's any question about that. So when I'm saying, hey, what you're saying about will is like calling living things dead and it gives us no reason to even want to be sustainable, I know you have reasons to want to be sustainable. In a way, if you accept my principles, that won't probably change you. You already agree. I'm trying to tell you a system that happens to support things you already agree with at the materialist level. It might not change your life, but in general it's important because the ideas do go in a certain direction, and in the long run, whatever that direction is will continue to express itself. I mean, as an individual, there's a lot of ways you might have gotten your compassion for your fellow human being. It might be from your parents, or or a million other sources. It's not really those principles. But when we break things down into principles, it actually does have an effect on how we think in the long run. And it does have an effect on how we can convince other people. So, so that's it. I think there's a lot of confusion around this. I think a lot of times we do end up calling people baby killers, and then their friends, acquaintances, people that understand them as human beings think, I know that guy's not a baby killer. And it sort of leads to an invalidation of the argument that you're having. So really we need to remember, I mean, sure, ideas are built out of the principles that support them in some sense, but we're also discovering those principles after the fact. So in this whole echelon of knowledge, we choose, just as intuitive beings, we choose which thing to use as a foundation, which variable to fix. So we can say it's wrong to kill and then debate why. Is it because God says it was wrong? Is it because we're humans? Is it because of practical reasons we just don't want to be killed? All of these things come after you have decided it is wrong to kill. So that's something that someone's going to hold on to. And I just want to clarify this because I know sometimes, well, basically because Wukhtar said, hey, I'm not that way and I don't believe that, and to many of my comments, and I just want to convey, I know you're not. That's why I'm saying you need other systems that support the way you really do believe. Now, as a final comment or example, I'll use the debate faith video I made recently. That blurs the line a little bit. I mean, in a way, I say that they are acting like they're using science as a new dogma and really thinking theistically. It's not as bad as baby killing in general, but when you're saying this to an atheist, it is an accusation of that type. And on the other hand, I gave them an easy out. I said, I'm not saying this about everybody that's ever been in that room. I've been in that room. So it's an easy out. Any of those atheists could say, well, I'm not that kind of atheist. But the trick there would come that some of the people in that room would have to change their behavior for their claim to not be that kind of atheist to be credible. So it's analogous to if a factory is polluting the local environment and that's leading to a high infant mortality rate, you might call the people running that factory or even working there, baby killers. But once again, you're doing that because you assume they don't want to be baby killers. You wouldn't take that approach with a psycho murderer that literally wants to kill babies. Specifically, directly, that's what they want. You wouldn't use that argument. You're using that argument because you know the people in that industry are just trying to make dish soap or whatever they're trying to make, and there's a ramification of their actions that you want them to face. So sometimes the line is blurred, and you really do end up calling somebody a baby killer because their principles have added up into action, and then they can be accused of that action. But still, even if the action isn't unintentional, it's not their primary goal, and you're trying to coax them into improving how they achieve their primary goal.